Welcome to Spicy Toast Gaming and our Gnar guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoy the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. We're putting out daily videos for Path of Champions, including guides and gameplay. Alright, let's get into the video. Starting off with a general overview of the champion and their deck, just so you can know if this is someone you want to spend your shards and time leveling up. So first off, we have unique playstyle. So his deck revolves around trying to hit the Nexus every single round. With anything can be 1 damage, but you're really trying to get that Nexus every single turn. Gives him a very unique playstyle because the way his units stack up is they have to hit the Nexus at least once. So it's a very unique playstyle that's very different from any other champions currently in the game. Next is weak early. Very similar to Teemo, he gets a lot of power from leveling up his kit and the levels you get just from your champion level. So he's fairly weak early, but will be very strong once he gets some of those buffs onto his cards, which we will talk about later. Now, cheap units. The most expensive unit in his deck is 4 mana, which is very nice. Most decks have something that is 6 mana or even higher. So the fact that all of your units and spells and just the entire deck is pretty cheap is definitely very nice. Next, we have built-in card draw. So one of the aspects people always try to get in their deck is sustain and card draw. So with him, one of his cards, when you use it, it draws a card, and you're able to generate that every time your champion strikes. And so having that built-in card draw just to help you not run out of cards is very nice to have. Next, many answers. What I mean by that is you have a lot of different spells in your deck that can answer what the enemy might throw you. So you have some removal that doesn't hit too hard but can help. You have a stun. You have multiple ways to buff up your own units. So if they're trying to kill them either with their own spells or with just their attack, you have many ways to answer what they throw at you and come out successful in that engagement. That is very nice because there's certain decks that really don't have any spells that either can help protect their units or to help CC, control the enemy, or just damage their units. So having a deck that has all those different answers built into it by default is very nice to have. Alright, we'll jump into game and take a look at the champion, his starting deck, what relics work well on him, and go from there. In game now with Gnar, we have him at 2 stars and level 20. So he is a 4 mana quick attack with 3/3. Strike, create a pokey stick in hand, or if you have one, reduce its cost by 2. Now the pokey stick, like we talked about earlier, is that deal 1 to anything, draw 1. So that's the built-in draw that you get, and since he's able to generate these, it's very nice to be able to keep drawing cards. It's not a huge amount, but it is definitely helpful. Now, when you damage the enemy Nexus, you transform at the round end, and then you become Mega Gnar. So now you have quick attack and overwhelm, and then when you level up, you grant the strongest enemy vulnerable. And then round end, if you started with the attack token, transform him back to Gnar. So 4 mana, he's tied for the most expensive unit in your deck, but we're going to try to cheat him out a bit earlier with the sash or stash that we'll get into later. Let's take a look at his deck. Well, first let's look at the star powers actually. So the first one, Outrage, round end, if you've damaged the enemy Nexus, this round grant your allies impact. So again, you only get that scaling benefit if you've damaged the enemy Nexus. So you always want to do that at least once so your units can keep getting buffed. Alright, the 2-star, +1 starting mana, round start, create a wall-up in hand. If you already have one, reduce its cost by 1. Now the wall-up, this is also his champion spell. 3 mana, deal 1 to an enemy, and stun it. So again, gives you a little bit of damage, but the main fact you're using this for is the stun. Now the fact that this is fast is very nice. So this can be used in response to when the enemy is attacking you, or even when you're attacking. If they play something to buff up their unit so that they'll now win the engagement and kill yours, you can stun it, or if they're attacking, this helps you just not have to block and stun out their unit. And yeah, the fact that this is fast, let's use it in response to what they're doing. Now, Annie also generates a stun every round, but because it's slow, you have to try to use it preemptively. With this, you can use reactively, which is very nice in-game. And then the fact that this is getting reduced every round is very helpful. And then the next star is that if you've damaged the enemy nexus, now it's grant your allies impact twice, so just a doubling of that first effect. So it feeds into itself, it gives you impact so that hopefully you can damage the nexus, but you have to damage the nexus to be able to get that stacking buff. I prefer this over someone like Vi, where Vi only gives it to one unit. Does also give them health, but if that unit then dies, feels really bad because now you wasted all of your stacks. The fact that this gives it to your whole board is very nice in my opinion. And then also I like the fact that you have to actually work for it. It is something that you have to focus on trying to do and gives him that very unique playstyle. But taking a look at his starting deck, first one is the Proto Poro with that impact. So you can try to use that to just attack, get that impact off, and at least damage the nexus. You get the Bitsy Lizard or Bitesy Lizard. And this is a transform unit, so when you've damaged an enemy nexus, transform into Lava Lizard. So 2 cost, 3, 4. Pretty good. 2 drop, not crazy, but decent. I get that Pokey Stick, which gets a upgrade of 1 damage. And this is very nice that it can damage anything. I know with Kaisa, one thing I really didn't like is that she doesn't have many answers in her deck. So when the enemy tries to use a spell against you or buff up their unit with a spell, there's not too much you can do. And the only removal they have can only target followers. The fact that this can target anything, including the Nexus, so you can use this to get your one hit in, is very nice. Tusk Speaker, once this gets Phage, it's absolutely amazing, dealing damage to both your Nexus, or both Nexus. So again, getting that proc off if you can't get it any other way. The Chief, when an ally transforms, fully heal it and grant it 1/1 and impact. So this is a decent card. It also works as good as a blocker, but out of all the cards to cut, this is normally the one I would. The fact that it's getting that transform buff, normally your units are transforming before you have him on the board, so it doesn't actually pay off that often. And normally it's too much of a low tempo play to play him instead of a different card. So while it is definitely a nice effect, normally if I'm going to cut a card from the deck, it would actually be him. Heroic Refrain, give 2 allies 2/1 this round. Now this is give, not grant, so it's only going to be temporary. But this is again one of those nice combat tricks you can pull out to buff your board so you can win those combat engagements. Primal Strength, this one is grant, so permanent, grant an ally 2/2 and impact. So being able to help out one unit, make sure they survive and get more damage across. We have Gnar at the 4-drop, and then the other 4-drop is the Teeny Dactyl, and this card is absolutely amazing. You don't mind that it costs 4 because it gets that Vampiric Scepter, so when you summon it, it's going to heal your Nexus 4. Very good. And then what happens is, if you've damaged the enemy Nexus and then you play it, it's going to transform at the end of the round into the Pterodactyl, which round start deals 1 to the enemy Nexus. So as long as this is on the board, you're going to be getting that buff from your star powers every round. So this is a great card for the deck. In general, the deck is pretty good, especially when you start getting some of the key items like the Phage, like the Vampiric Scepter. It works pretty well together. It's a little weak early, but yeah, once you level him up, it does feel pretty strong. It's not going to be one of the strongest champions of this batch that's been released, but I do think he'll have a good place. Alright, taking a look at the relics for Gnar. So the Scourge's stash, plunder, I cost 2 less. Since you're damaging the Nexus every round, you normally will be able to cheat him out early, which is very nice. The other one I'd like to go with is the Dreadway Chase Gun. So when you're summoned, create 2 warning shots in hand. Warning shot, as you see, 0 mana burst, deal 1 to the enemy Nexus. So this is great for being able to have those in your back pocket. So if there's any round that you're not going to be able to damage the Nexus any other way, you can use this just to get that 1 damage in and keep buffing your own units. So this is what I'm running with right now. You could do Archangel Staff. You do have a lot of spells, so refilling your spell mana, it's not bad. Don't get baited into any of the level up effects. Yes, he is a champion that levels up multiple times, but since it's at round end, you won't get any positive effects from those level ups. The Shade Leaf is actually pretty good. Having an elusive unit that can keep sneaking in and hitting the Nexus is very good to have. So being able to grant elusive to some of your units is pretty good. Gale Force I wouldn't really go with because you want him to stay on the board so he can transform and get big. Some of the general stat buffs are okay. So you could also give your units Challenger or later on the Overwhelm right here. Those can work, but I don't think I would go with it. I'd just try to get Overwhelm through the powers instead. And Challenger can be nice, but normally with all the combat tricks and the fact that some of your units have Challenger as it is, you don't really need it too much. So for the commons, you could get the Lost Chapter. Spell Shield hasn't really been needed. Soul Spear to give yourself Fearsome has actually worked out pretty well, so you can try to attack and not have units be able to block you because they have too little attack. The Game Start Heal your Nexus, so you will be damaging your own Nexus sometimes, or sometimes you have to let them attack because your impact doesn't go off if you're blocking, and so you want to save your units so you can attack. That's definitely something you could go with, but I think for the most part, the Scourge's stash is really good for him because you're going to be able to get it off consistently. And then I do like the chase guns so that you can get that buffing effect going for you if you couldn't hit it any other way, because you want to hit that Nexus every round if possible. Alright, so that's it for the in-game section. We'll go back over and take a look at some of the powers you want to get with him when you're playing an adventure, and which ones really help him out the most. Alright, looking at the in-game powers for Gnar, so one that I've actually very much liked is the Officer Backup. Game start, summon a Sting Officer. So that is a elusive 2/1. And so having that elusive unit so that you can get those attacks off and consistently damage the Nexus, especially in those early rounds, is very nice to start stacking up that buff. So definitely try it out if you see that. It's worked pretty well for me in the past, and I usually try to get it, especially if it's the first power I see. Overwhelm can be nice, just so that you have another chance to damage the enemy Nexus. Granted, normally if you're going to be attacking, the impact will be doing that for you, but just in case, another way to try to get that extra damage on the Nexus. Raiding Party works pretty well for Gnar. So when you damage the enemy Nexus, grant your top ally in your deck 1/1. So this, it's every time you damage the Nexus, so doing a lot of small hits works out very well, because that's normally what you're going to be doing. So this just helps stack up your items or your cards in your deck, and you can normally get some pretty big drops in the mid game. So that's the first group of powers. Just again trying to focus on your main game plan of hitting that enemy nexus every single round and trying to get that buff stacked up on your units to close out the game. Alright, moving on to the next group of powers. So these are all spells focused. There's a lot of spells in your deck. You're going to be generating some as well. So just being able to refill your spell mana, reduce your spell's cost, and also reduce the cost of your created cards. You are creating that wallop potentially every round, so reducing that down. And then also your Gnar is creating those pokey sticks, so making those get a bit cheaper. And then also just making it so that you can use your spells freely. If you have sorcery, that means you can use the wallop every single round because it costs 3 mana, and you have 3 spell mana, so that's getting refilled. So these are pretty helpful. Now, it's not a spells-focused deck, but there are a lot of spells in it. So just being able to have the freedom to use those combat tricks when they pop up, definitely very nice. So this is something to bear in mind when you're going through and getting those powers. These do actually help a good amount. Alright, that's it for the in-game powers. Thank you so much for watching that video. We're putting out daily content for Path of Champions, so if that interests you, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment down below. We're just starting out here on YouTube, trying to grow the channel, so any help is greatly appreciated. Thank you, and have a great day.